Hey, well, I am here and excited to be here with Matt Mahar, the CEO of Cana. How you doing,
I'm
Matt?
doing well, Mike. Thanks.
I have to say, been following food tech for like a good part of a decade now, and I don't get excited about new products very often. But when I saw the news of the Cana molecular beverage printer, what you guys are calling it last week, I got pretty excited because this idea of recreating any sort of drink from a drink printer is pretty cool. We'll dive into the details of what all that is about. But how do you, Matt, when you explain the Cana at a dinner party,
hmm
like how do you explain it to people? What's kind of the elevator pitch?
Oh yeah. So um, I usually tell people that we're building the Star Trek replicator, and my age group, the people I'm having a dinner party with right away, are like, "Oh, I get it," because they're Star Trek fans, right? And they've watched it
Yeah.
and they remember it, and then right away they go to, "Okay, well, or can I get anything out of that?" And then it's, "Hey, listen, we're really focused on beverages." Food and beverages, but right now in the short term on beverages, and then they start talking about um, tea Earl Grey hot. They start really getting into the show. So I think that's the best conceptual way for people to think about what we're building at Cana.
Yeah, and the idea's genesis came, Dave Freiberg, who is the founder of the production board, and I think conceptualized a lot of this early in 2019 or so. Said he wrote a blog post on Medium describing this dinner party he had with some scientists, an article that described how most drinks were like 95% water, maybe some sugar, some alcohol, and then 1% flavor compounds. And it kind of arrived at like eventually got to that after more wine, I imagine. Like, hey, why don't we just recreate the Star Trek beverage food replicator? And lo and behold, 3 years later, they did that. But between that time, they created a research group and kind of worked on this and incubated this idea for a while.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Dave shared the same story with me first started talking to him and the production board about what they were doing at Cana. And I think what's really interesting is that research team was really focused in on the science of how you can understand what is the molecular makeup of a beverage, right now, and really understanding if you can reduce the number of compounds and still have a great tasting beverage. I mean, at its core, that's what that team was doing, and it took a bit of time to do that. To be honest, I mean, that's no small feat. None of the technology, none of the processes, none of the technology stack existed. And so that team had to bring everything together over the course of 3 years to be able to get to a point where we can consistently do that in a very smart and efficient, almost automated way to understand what goes into all the beverages that we in the world.
I do want to get into that, right? The compounds and kind of how you guys discovered that and what that is. But I think that I've been following Freiberg for a while, and his kind of working thesis around the production board is interesting. Like, hey, let's rethink these century-old food production systems that we scaled over the past 100 200 years because they're hugely resource intensive, where we're shipping tons of water around there because the beverage industry is like a $3 trillion industry. We're growing cows and to produce meat, hugely inefficient. So he has this working thesis that kind of is the fuel behind so much of what they do. And that was the idea, and largely driving Cana. Why are we shipping big boxes of water, largely water, around the world? When we look at the drink and beverage market, we can basically just get it down to compounds, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, his thesis, very broadly speaking, right? So not just for food and beverage, is this idea that the way that we've scaled up our production, our methods of production, right, to be able to provide people with very cheap and ubiquitous consumer goods is just broken, right? And to your point, it requires a lot of natural resources and a lot of input. And then there's actually a significant reduction in the amount of output, right? It takes, I think, 30 times. We lose 30x the amount of energy from the raw ingredients and materials we put into building something and the energy that we get out of it. So I think Dave's broadly saying, hey, listen, we have all the molecules in the world that we need. We don't need to go to Mars. We can stay here. We just need to make these methods of production much more efficient. And I think the unlock for us at Cana is specifically when we're looking at beverages is, Yeah, a typical, like as an example, a beer, let's say, right? It's 94% water, about 5% alcohol, and about 1% of it is the flavor. So if you can just use the water that's already readily available, I mean, it's already piped into everyone's home, it's clean, it's very accessible. If we can just leverage that, and we can take as beer as an example, that other, 6%, and somehow get that to someone's home in a more efficient manner, then we should be able to reduce the impact of the current methods of the way that we're producing beverages. So, he has this macro idea, and he really zoomed in on beverages and have been able to, because of the way beverages are made, apply it.
And specifically around the Cana in his post, and this is something I've written a lot about. There's this idea of distribution and kind of pushing intelligence to the edge. And because I've been a long time network analyst, like the idea of pushing intelligence and processing and manufacturing to the edge has been like a concept I've been thinking a lot about, and it's been happening in food for a while. We're seeing it with like coffee roasting. We're seeing it with making a meat in kind of micro meat factories, like and distributed in the cities. And now we're seeing it in potentially, instead of having a giant Coca-Cola or Budweiser factory, we're talking about, hey, let's make drinks at the edge with an intelligent beverage printer. So it's pushing everything. We have the technology now to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing that is, I think, resonates well. You asked about the dinner party, how I explain it, and I talked to people. Have you ever heard of 3D printing? And a lot of people have. It's been around for a while, and I think the promise early on of 3D printing was that you and I are going to be able to print all of our products at home. We won't even buy the speaker anymore fully assembled. We'll buy some sort of digital version of that, and we'll have this 3D printer at home. We'll print things out, and you see that we probably haven't hit our end, the real big vision there, but you can start to see it happening where 3D printers are much more capable now. They're printing not just one type of resin, they're printing multiple different types of resins, and the cost of them and usability of them is starting to come down. So I think 3D printing is a really interesting technology that we've been able to look at and say, okay, if you can do that with manufacturing of hard goods, how can you take some of the same thinking on ours? There's some of the same technologies that exist in the world, so that we can apply those to food and beverage. And can we then put manufacturing, similar to 3D printing, can we then put beverage manufacturing, can we decentralize it and put it into someone's home? So I think it's just probably a matter of time before we get to a place where we have multiple types of manufacturing on your countertop for the different types of things that you need in your life. We're focused on food and beverage, but I could definitely imagine one where 3D printers for hard goods are also alive and well in your house.
Yeah, I've referenced the episode of Upload. I don't know if you watch Upload on Amazon. It's a great show. They have like the printer that prints the Jamie Oliver hamburger.
Right.
And so like I'm looking forward to the Cana Jamie Oliver hamburger printer in around 2030 or so. You guys maybe are making that. But I do want to talk about the product itself a little bit. I think that I heard some reference to around 70 to 80 flavor compounds. Everything could be reduced to that. And is that like per drink? Are you thinking you can make almost an infinite amount of beverages, tea, coffee, wine with the same 780 flavor compounds?
Yeah, I think that's one of the key nuances to call out here. So we talked about that very small 1%, let's say, 1 to 5% of a beverage by volume is the unique compounds that give it its mouthfeel, its flavor, and its aroma, right, and its color. And so what we've realized in our work is that there's a massive overlap between all beverages and a subset of the compounds and ingredients that you need to make those. So there's a huge overlap between the ingredients you need to make a beer and a wine. There's a huge overlap between a wine and a coffee. And so it allows us then to take a view of beverages as a universal set of ingredients. It's very similar to, you walk into your pantry, at home, and you're like, okay, I got flour and I got sugar and I got butter and I got eggs, and you can make a cookie or you could make a muffin or you could make a cake, but from the same ingredients, just by adjusting the amount of those ingredients. It's the same thing that we have. Our ingredient set is it's actually over 80, but what we've been able to do is figure out a way to compress and those into essentially just over 80 different spots in a cartridge. And so with those 80, we can essentially make everything you need from AM to PM. That's a coffee or a hydration drink in the morning. That's to a nightcap in the evening with a wine or a cocktail.
Okay, let's talk about a few more of the nuances and just clarifications because it's super interesting, but we haven't really kind of seen the product details. You guys are going to announce those, I think, in the next month or two, more details. But I'd love to know when I'm, for example, looking at something like alcohol
Mm-hmm.
or a kind of a sugary cola, are those sweeteners included in the cartridge? Is for my cocktail at night or my beer, is the alcohol included, or are those separate things that I have to provide?
No, they're all included. So, one of the things is we're asking consumers to, come on a journey with us, right? Now there's the beverage aisle is on your countertop is the way we think about it, and that's a significantly different experience. And so we've tried to remove as much friction as possible from our experience because it's so new. So you don't ever have to essentially pick up anything. You would never have to go to the grocery store ever again or down the beverage aisle, and to get anything that you need. Everything that you need will show up. And it just, you can just replace it. So the most effort you ever have to do is you have to replace our ingredient cartridge. But everything is in there, your sugars, your acids, your flavors, your colors, everything that you need is in there, including the spirits.
Wow. So if I'm like having a cocktail party, you guys can support me through a whole cocktail
Yeah.
party. It must be pretty concentrated though. Like, I mean, if you think about how much alcohol you need to do like a cocktail party, right? Like it seems like the volume, even if you're talking about that 5%, it's got to be a lot of volume for the cartridge.
Yeah. So, well, it depends on the cocktail party. I don't know how you, how you,
Or if I'm just a heavy
yeah, what
drinker.
yours are like. Yeah. But think of it as what we provide to, through our system is essentially a month or more. That's kind of the baseline that we've tried to get to is like, let's get everything that, Mike needs for daily life as well as his cocktail party and use it about a month as our minimum. It can go more depending on how much you're consuming out of it. But again, like no other device, what's interesting about ours is, without going too deep, is that it knows when you need more of a ingredient, and then or when you need a new cartridge, and we can essentially send that to you automatically, so you never have to think about it.
I mean, will there be like if someone is, hey, they're not a coffee drinker, they basically like, or maybe they just drink coffee, they're a teetotaler, they don't drink
Right.
alcohol. Are they going to be kind of customized, maybe a little more heavy on kind of kind of type of ingredient than the other kind of cartridges, or?
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a great idea. I think the it makes sense to make things as personalized as possible. I mean, that's why you as well. That's one of the other reasons you do personalized. You do decentralized manufacturing. There's the environmental part, but it also allows us to be really, really personalized and allows you to customize things. But anyways, we'll have more on that topic. I think in the next like month or so. I don't want to go too deep on it, but I think the instincts there are right.
Yeah, yeah. And before in our pre-chat, I told you if I'm asked about stuff you're going to be announcing in a month or two, feel free to say no because you guys are going to be coming out with more news on this stuff, including pricing,
Right.
etc. But without specifics on pricing, in terms of the business model, is this something where like it's in a pretty expensive upfront purchase, or like hey, and then like kind of you're making money on the cartridges, or any kind of details on what the business model looks like?
Yeah, I think we'll share more next month, but I'll just say that the goal that we have at Cana is that our drinks should always be cheaper than what you would pay at retail. That's always our goal, right? And so our target in all this is to try to provide drinks that are, roughly 50% cheaper than what you would get at retail and significantly cheaper than, if you and I went to a restaurant or a bar, right? And that's our target. So, that's probably as far as I'll go. But to your point, we'll be talking about what the exact cost is for the product in the next couple months.
You bring up a great point about personalization, and that's just a large scale macro trend that's been exciting in food for a while. And as I think about the Cana and the ability to make like Mike's special coffee drink or a brew, my son likes to mix hot chocolate and coffee for some reason. Like it's like that's his
Yeah.
thing. So like I can imagine, okay, we can make the standard off the shelf drinks, but like what might be really fun for users ultimately is like these personalized recipes.
Yeah, I think what the capabilities that we can unlock with, again, that analogy of going into your pantry, and then you as the baker, or you as the consumer, being able to say, okay, I feel like a cookie, or I feel more like like a donut. Yes, we want to unlock that. We want to unlock that for people. And there's depths that we can go to there that are going to be like nothing that exists on the market right now. Like not even close. Essentially, the way to think about this would be, this is like having your own mixologist and your own barista in your house every day.
And you know, we joked about the Jamie Oliver kind of hamburger or steak or whatever, but like I imagine because this thing's I'm assuming connected, like you do a partnership with Kenji Lopez, all or maybe Dave Arnold, who's like wrote the book on this great
Yeah.
mixology book, and he comes out with this brand new cocktail recipe, and let's send that to my Cana, right? So like I love this idea of like maybe doing partnerships with food influencers. Like, you guys have to be thinking about that.
Yeah, I think that's come up. I mean, when Dave talked about Canna on the Twist podcast, right, with Jason, excuse me, he brought up this idea that when you're decentralizing, we're also trying to enable the next generation of creators, right? And that's really what we want to do. Anyone who's out there who's ever wanted to have a beverage brand and has wanted to connect, maybe they already have a following, right? So the Spoon has their following, right? That, stays close to you guys. There's an opportunity for us to partner with you and allow you as creators to provide a drink to the world. So there's a whole lot of space there. I think, again, details to come on how that will work, but I think that this creator economy that's been coming along, where people are creating their own, say, like news and media content, that's just going to bleed itself into other areas, and it's just a matter of time before it gets to food and beverage. And I think we'll be one of the first companies to really unlock that for people.
Yeah, this idea of like the food creator and kind of pushing micro manufacturing capabilities to the edge is like I talked a lot about that with the guys from Pico Brew, right? But like I feel like that first generation of like kind of intelligent kind of micro manufacturing at the edge, it's just there's so many impediments, and ultimately the business models broke for a lot of them and they didn't survive. But like if you guys can make this work and allow creators to really create their creations. Man, by the way, if I could do like a spoon drink recipe and push it out, like that'd be fantastic. So that'd be a lot of fun. So like I love that idea of like, hey, we've created our special cocktail for Friday this week. Let's push it out. Like, why wouldn't the New York Times do that if there's like a million Canas out there?
I mean, yeah, I mean, absolutely, totally, they would. I think it's like, this is like, when you put the power into people's hands, they come up with really amazing solutions to things and ways to connect with. So you use the New York Times as an example for ways to them to extend their brand, or into their consumer base. And I think food and beverage will be no different in the near future. I see, my background coming from Nike in the shoe space. They had a thing called Nike ID, and they've then leveraged that to actually do partnerships with well-known designers as well as athletes and celebrities. And so you see that happening in some spaces, right? And it's just a matter of time before it comes into someone's home and it comes into food and beverage.
Well, you mentioned your background, so I do want to ask. You joined, I think, about a year ago. Looking at your LinkedIn, and you come from a company I'm pretty familiar with because I wrote a lot about the smart home, and so Vivint is one of the leaders there and kind of connected smart home stuff. So, why did you make the leap from Nike and then Vivint smart home space into Cana? What was that? Did someone they say, hey, we need someone who can bring a product to market?
Well, yeah, a lot of things. Yeah. So I think, like, just backing up a little bit. So I've always kind of gravitated towards like emerging technology and emerging products. And so that's always been something that has just generally, I've tried to stay on the forefront. So, riding the wave, 10 years ago now, I guess, or more, of connected apparel. And then, with Vivint and smart home, riding that same wave and understanding, what's happening in the home. That was like the next big part for me, anyways, that I was really interested in. And I think for me, I get a say like an itch every couple of years where I'm like, okay, this is really interesting what I'm doing. but what else can I apply my skills to, right, and my interests to? And one of the things that was different this time around, when I was at Vivint and I started to reassess, was that there's just like, the similar to Dave's thesis, I hadn't gone as deep as him, but there's better ways to produce the products and that we consume, and we got to stress on the way we're using our water and access to water. So I started to really zone in on the environmental aspect of our consumption. And so for me, I started to gravitate towards wanting to use my powers in a way that would have a better impact on the environment, right? Well, I guess a lesser impact on the environment. And that's where I came across Cana. And then, you meet Dave. I also met Bharat Vasan, who's part of the production board as well. And the big thinkers, like moonshot thinkers, right? And that's a very awesome thing to be part of. So for me, it was cutting edge technology, but also let's do this for Mother Earth, right? She needs a lot of help, as much help as possible. So how can I help?
Yeah, I feel like Dave is like if Elon Musk wasn't concerned about like tweeting all the time and was a little bit smarter about doing things, like that's what you get when you get Dave Freiberg. And I think his thesis has been fascinating. I've been following him for a while. Just kind of looking forward, where do you see this kind of space going and kind of Cana going? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, but like, do you see you guys maybe doing other products, maybe moving outside of beverages? I mean, what's kind of any kind of broad hints towards the future?
So I think for us specifically, our view of the future is big. Like when we start talking about food and beverage, there's, we've talked about the types of beverages that we think we can do in our Gen 1 product. But there is a lot of legs across beverages, lots of different types of beverages, right? So there's a huge opportunity for us to step into that space, as well as anything that's liquid based. So any home essentials, things like that, big opportunity. And then I think when we look longer term, say like a decade from now, there's no doubt in my mind that based on what's happening in labs now with food, so alternative ways to create meat and fish, that there's a role for what we're building at Cana to play in bringing that to a decentralized manufacturing and decentralized manufacturing to someone's home. So I think there's lots of legs across food and beverage, but then there's also this huge area that's liquids in general, right? That's essentially what we're dealing with.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see this future. I'm looking forward in 5 years to talk about the Cana home-based meat printer. Any meat product you want. So, but Matt Mahar, thank you so much for telling me about what you're building at Cana.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the time.